Well, it's been over 2.5 years, but we've finally got a breakthrough. The BBC's Andrew Benson has finally revealed the truth about Abu Dhabi. And I'm going to go through some of the things that he's revealed. This is probably only about half of them, okay, but it's a start. This is absolutely incredible. So I'm going to take you through them right now. So, in revealing that it was a complete sport-wide systematic contrivance, we go back. It does go back further than this. There is more to it than this, but I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible. We go back to the clip of Nicholas Latifi's driver camera as Nicholas Latifi is beginning his lap 52. Remember, he's been lapped. I've got to just have it out of screenshot so the video doesn't get blocked. But this is the message Nicholas Latifi receives at the start of lap 52.
Has to be this lap, mate.
I don't know if you heard that. His race engineer tells him it has to be this lap, mate. If we can now cut to tracker view,
relax at the end of this.
We'll see. There's a slight delay between the two. Latifi's now entering turn 1. Okay, let's see what happens later this lap, what it had to be.
Season, will he think back to Silverstone? Will he think that if I'd have just given up the fight that day to win the overall battle, I'd be world champion now? Or will that not enter his mind?
I've asked him that a couple of times on camera and he's like, no, I wouldn't. In fact, he actually rejoined on that when I asked him that in Brazil. He said, no, I'd do the same thing again. My feeling is, I don't know why you do the same thing again, because he had a 33-point lead that morning and ended up, sadly for Max, in hospital that day.
Brundle and Crofty there, just doing a little bit of small talk while there's no major action going on track. But just to incite the Max Verstappen fans with that feeling of injustice for Max having a 33-point lead, but then ending up in hospital, because, you know, the reaction that that's going to cause.
Lando Norris on and up to 8th place after a late pit stop caused by that slow puncture. He's charging through the field.
See, Lando Norris charging through the field. Had a late puncture, but now he's got some fresh tyres, so he can go pretty quick. He's chasing down Pierre Gasly. So Hamilton has lapped Norris, and he's on his way now to try and catch Gasly. But so is Norris. Norris is going to have some pace.
Teammate Daniel Ricciardo moves out of the way of Max Verstappen, then quickly gets back onto the racing line because he wants to try and keep Charles Leclerc at bay, but both Ricciardo and Leclerc out of the points at the moment. Mercedes on course to be Constructors' champions for a 8th record-breaking 8th consecutive time, and in a season where the regulations changed ever so slightly, but at their detriment at the start of this season, it's once again a great recovery because they felt they've been hampered coming into this season by those slight regulation changes.
Wow, that feels like a...
Oh no! Nicholas Latifi has now crashed.
long time ago, doesn't it? But yes, Mercedes had an awful pre-season test, didn't they? We thought they would be in terrible trouble come the first race.
Oh no! Nicholas Latifi has crashed, and I think that is at turn 14.
Where we saw safety car.
Absolutely right, Crofty. It's at turn 14. So let's just
Raikkonen a crash in practice. It is at turn 14, and yes, that will be a safety car because marshals are going to need to recover that Williams and to work on it. And this now completely changes the context of this race if they can clear the Williams in time and we can have a couple of laps racing to the checkered flag.
There's bound to be a couple, and of course
Martin Brundle there, the sports expert, and Crofty, the commentator for in excess of 10 years, are suggesting to the global watching audience that there is bound to be a couple of racing laps once this has been cleared up. We are on, or let's have a quick look on data view.
Verstappen's much.
So if we look here, where's the lap counters here? Last lap. Where are we looking for the number of laps that have elapsed? Hamilton is completing his lap 53. I was expecting it to be showing this on data view. Let's just see if we hit play.
Fresher tyres will fire up and give him the confidence on any kind of restart.
That Max is still on the old hard compound tyres there, Martin. You know, you can see that he's there still on the hard compound tyres. So don't start the tyre narrative just yet, Martin. Yeah, we are finished. Hamilton is completing his lap 53, meaning there are 5 laps remaining. I've done the data, and Andrew's aware of it, so this is what he's been able to reveal. The data reveals that when this type of incident occurs, on average, 5.5 laps of a Grand Prix are removed from racing. It takes 5.5 laps before racing can resume in such circumstances. There were only 5.4 laps remaining when Nicholas Latifi crashed, and in order to get even just 1 lap of racing, the incident would have been had to been cleared up in 4.4 laps when the average is 5.5. To get a couple of laps, it would have had to have been cleared up in 3.4 laps, which again the average is 5.5. And bearing in mind, within these time periods, that includes the mandatory procedure of the pack bunching up, the track being declared safe after the clear up after the operation, the release of the lapped cars, and the safety car performing 1 further lap beyond that lap that those lapped cars are released on, in order to give those released cars the opportunity to make it around and catch the back of the pack, so that we'll see as we go through this where Norris is relative to Gasly at the point in time Latifi crashes, and then where he is left relative to Gasly as a result of the safety incident, which is the purpose of the regulations. So, safety car, we'll go back to tracker view.
Restart, it depends how...
So we can see here, Norris is now held behind Hamilton. Gasly, who Norris would have, in the same way that Hamilton would have caught Gasly to lap him, Norris would have tried to catch Gasly for a top 10 finish, a top 10 position at that stage, and extra points. But Gasly's going to end up disappearing. All right. We'll see that Alonso has just passed the scene of the crash as well. We'll forward this a little bit.
There will be, I'm pretty sure, on lap 52, obviously because of the slow pace with 5 to go, that they'll probably have a lap or 2, as long as they get it. If they get a vehicle on there and get that out of the way.
Second affirmation that they'll probably have a lap or 2. Again, the data would suggest that this is a safety car finish, and yet the sports expert commentators are directing your attention to believe that there is going to be a lap or 2 of racing left. But this is a highly technical, complex sport, data-driven.
And coming into the pits, Max Verstappen. Hamilton stays out. Verstappen coming into the pits, and I would imagine there's a set of soft tyres waiting for him to go onto that Red Bull car. Yes, it is.
I can't box.
Negative.
Right, so if there is a restart, Verstappen now has fresh, soft tyres.
The introduction of the tyre narrative, the message you heard between Hamilton and Mercedes, that would have taken place somewhere around by the start-finish straight. F1 TV have selected that to play to you, the watching world, so that this makes you feel a certain way. This leads you to believe a story a certain way by the information that they're feeding you about this.
Lewis has heavily used hard compound tyres. They will let any lap runners through on the...
But any doesn't mean all, Martin, does it? They will let any lap runners through, but that doesn't mean all. That's the wording of the regulation, Martin, that you've never really... I don't recall you using it that way before, but you did in Abu Dhabi.
Safety car restart, and he will presumably end up, well, they had nothing to lose. Once again, Red Bull had nothing to lose here.
They have nothing to lose. Hamilton is a long
Red Bull had nothing to lose.
way clear as Perez also pits, as we can see, and there's quite a few coming into the pits. Hamilton's a long way clear on the track, but I rather get the feeling by the time he comes around to the main straight, he's not going to be able to pit and stay ahead of Max Verstappen. That chance wasn't there, or has gone by for Mercedes.
Verstappen tucked up behind Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin there.
But he won't be on the restart.
But he won't be on the restart. You know, we are still pushing towards the notion of a restart when the data would suggest otherwise. And we've still got to look at what is actually taking place on the track. How quickly is this being cleared up? We never get to see, because they don't show us the real-time footage of that. They show us replay after replay after replay to disorientate us.
Wow.
So look, we're on lap 54 of 58 here. They've got to clear that debris away, and the fire extinguishers have obviously gone off because the brakes, I'm sure, were getting very, very hot. But they've also got to let the lapped cars unlap themselves.
Absolutely right, Crofty. So you do know.
Just at the back of my mind, I wonder if we're going to get any racing laps in this race. Wait.
What's the average time taken and how long was left, and therefore what's the probability of getting any racing laps in? But you've already suggested to us there's bound to be a couple, and you've affirmed that, and you've then affirmed that when we get racing.
See, this is what happened to Nicholas Latifi. He was scrapping away with Mick Schumacher.
That's not the cornering crash.
Okay, what we need to do is consider this from the viewpoint of the sport's most experienced driver, and that would be Fernando Alonso.
Turn 14.
So I will just show you a little bit from Fernando.
Well.
What's happening here? What's going on here? There's Nicholas Latifi's car. All of that white powdery smoky dust is the fire extinguisher that's gone off. So this is just one lap after the crash. Fernando, this is Fernando's opinion on it.
Yeah, we should unlap and get the job done until they retire the car.
Yes, we should unlap and get this job done until they retire the car. Fernando, you are the sport's most experienced driver. You know that you don't begin unlapping until the track is declared safe. You've just passed the incident where there is a car that's on the track that has just had a fire extinguisher extinguish a fire in that car. And your suggestion is, oh, we should unlap to get this job done. What is this job, Fernando?
Because if not, it's going to be too late.
Because if not, it's going to be too late. What's this, Fernando? What's going to be too late? The setting up of the grandstand finish, Fernando? Is that what it would be too late if we don't unlap now? The experienced Fernando Alonso knows what needs to happen, but how he's saying it should be done isn't how it's allowed to happen. That's strange, isn't it? That's not congruent with normal behaviour. Anyway, thank you for your valuable insight there, Fernando. Back to track of view.
Be any more racing laps? If there are, then Verstappen has got the tyres to really do something with them. Will they let the lap runners through?
Well, they always do let the lap runners through.
Absolutely. Why is Martin Brundle asking the question? Why is he asking the question of the global audience of 108.7 million people, many of whom don't know what the rules and regulations are because they're first-time viewers of this show? And Martin is asking whether or not they're going to unlap the lapped cars. That has been a mandatory regulation since 2012. It's not optional. And Martin is asking whether or not it will happen. Why would that be?
And in between Hamilton and Verstappen, Norris, Alonso, Ocon, Leclerc and Vettel.
We list 5 cars. There are 8 cars that have been lapped. We can look on data view. Martin tells us the day afterwards in a contrived interview where he lies the day afterwards. You know what? It's not even easy to identify who the lapped cars are. Here it is. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There they are. It's not that difficult. And Andrew's revealing this anyway. So, but they just listed 5 of those because all they listed to draw your attention to was the 5 cars in between Sir Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen.
Extends the safety car period.
And Martin now says to everybody, if they release the lapped cars, it extends the safety car period. No, it's not an extension of it. You're not artificially prolonging something. The safety car period takes as long as it takes to deal with the safety incident and then carry out the mandatory requirements that are required to take place before racing can resume. Because once you have to neutralise a race due to having to deal with a safety concern, you have to reset that race in effect. The race gets restarted from essentially a 0 position. What happens is you can see all of the cars are beginning to bunch up one behind the other. And so what needs to occur is that order of them being bunched up is 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, all the way down to the last running competitor. That means all of the previously built up advantages between each of the competitors is nullified, and that uniformly applies to all of the competitors running. Okay, that equates to sporting fairness to all competitors. This has ruined the race. All of the advantages that you'd all built up over each other, they've now been wiped out. So that's the condition that has to be achieved. You can't do it any other way. The reason being, as I suggested before, we've got Lando Norris here, who the leader had passed, Lewis Hamilton had passed, but Lando was previously in a battle with Pierre Gasly. Now, where's Pierre Gasly? Well, Pierre Gasly is now here. Okay, the reason why he's now ahead of Tsunoda is Tsunoda pitted for fresh tyres, and Gasly didn't at that stage. Gasly will go into the pits and emerge from the pits behind Tsunoda, and ultimately will end up at the very back of this safety car bunch. Essentially, from being less than 12 seconds behind Gasly, Norris will now be almost a lap behind him. Whilst at the same time, Verstappen, who was slightly further behind Hamilton than Norris was behind Gasly, he'll have had the opportunity to bunch right up to Hamilton. Well, that's skewing the outcomes for different competitors in that sporting event, just due to a safety concern. That's not allowed to happen. So that's why we have these regulations, and that's why they have to be carried out before racing can resume after a race has been neutralised by the deployment of a safety car. The sporting experts, the former driver who drove for 10 years and who has been the presented expert for 28 years, is not articulating that, is he? Why?
But that's what they always do, take the lap runners out of the way so they're not interfering in play.
The reason given by Crofty, the commentator of in excess of 10 years, isn't the truth. That's what they always do, is to take them out of the way so they're not interfering. It's nothing to do with interference. It's to do with sporting fairness. This broadcasting team is lying to the global watching audience about the purpose of the regulations of the sport. Why?
The situation behind me.
So, situation is, Verstappen has pitted. He had a free pit stop. We would have lost track position to him. 4 laps remaining when you cross the line.
So when you cross the line, so he hadn't crossed the line. Here is the start finish straight. Here is the checkered flag. So this message took place before then. F1 TV have selected that and are now playing it to the global audience. They've not played all of the messages that have taken place between all of the drivers and all of the teams. They select what ones they want us to hear, and in doing so, that makes us believe things to be a certain way, draws our attention to certain things.
So this field has to bunch, and then they have to send lap cars through, so it may not restart.
Is he right behind me?
He will be, once they've sorted out all the order. This is going to take...
What's the narrative? Is this going to happen? Is it not? Is it going to happen? Is it not? Stay on the edge of your seats, boys and girls. Anything can happen. This is Formula One. It's only live once.
A while to sort out.
There might be one.
With new tyres.
Copy Lewis. We would have lost track position if we had pitted.
And that was the big key here. Mercedes, for the second time, keeping Lewis Hamilton out, whilst Max Verstappen pitted. Red Bull had nothing to lose.
This is the big key here. The tyre situation. The tyre narrative. Red Bull had nothing to lose.
Hamilton potentially losing track position, and in this case, if we don't go racing again because you can't overtake under the safety car, he would have lost the World Championship.
In this case, if we don't go racing again because you can't overtake it under the safety car, absolutely right. If he had pitted, which he didn't do, and had lost track position, which he didn't do, he'd have lost the World Championship. That's rather a strange way of putting it. You can quite simply tell the watching world, forget all those scenarios that you've just painted the picture of that didn't happen. The simple statement, Crofty, is if we don't go racing again because there's not enough laps left to get this clear-up operation done and carry out the required procedures before racing can resume, Lewis Hamilton will become a record-breaking 8-time world champion. Can you, as the sports expert, and Martin Brundle as the sports expert, tell that to the world?
Is there a vehicle pulling the Williams out of the way or not yet?
Can't see it at the moment. Ted, down to you.
Yeah, have a load of other people pitting. Yuki Tsunoda, Pierre Gasly, Daniel Ricciardo. We've had Lance Stroll as well into the pits. I'll give you those orders as they shake out. But yeah, it was just bad luck. I mean, you saw the Mercedes mechanics just hanging around outside the pits looking at whether they had the order to come in. But Hamilton was so close to the pit entrance that it does seem that the engineer's right there. Whatever they would have done, they would have lost track position.
The safety car's not going full gas down the straight.
Copy Lewis, understood.
His tyres are cooling. He needs more pace, more heat into those tyres.
This is all.
The tyre issue that they are again drawing your attention to is not the issue. Lewis is concerned that the safety car is dragging its heels, going purposefully slow, slower than it would normally go, in order to try to give the clear-up operation more time to artificially then create that time window to ensure that a last racing lap takes place. That is the concern that Lewis is projecting on the radio. The commentators spin that around and say, oh, yes, this is so bad for Lewis. The lack of speed is causing his tyre temperature to be low and therefore be low on grip. This is terrible for him. Well, it's not that bad because there isn't any sign of race resumption yet. And we've not carried out this mandatory procedure of releasing the lapped cars yet. And so once you do that, you know you're gearing up to a restart. And in that time, you can do your heating the tyres up procedure. But that isn't even on the horizon at the moment. But these commentators are drawing our attention to the tyre situation, the tyre narrative.
For Lewis then with those hard compound, heavily used tyres. So there's the shunt then that caused the safety. It has to be a safety car there. And
it has to be a safety car there. But we don't get to see the live pictures of that. Let's have a look at Max Verstappen's view of the situation. Oh, there it is. The car is being craned off the track. There's a lot of powder on there and there's still debris on the track. So,
normally on a wet day that they don't.
What's normally on a wet day, Martin?
But will they let the lap runners through? I don't think.
Once again, Martin Brundle, the expert of the sport, who's been commentating on the sport for 28 years, been an ever-present commentator since 2012 when the regulation to unlap lapped cars was reintroduced into the sport, has been involved in the sport for those 198 Grand Prix that have taken place under those regulations since the beginning of the 2012 season. This is the 199th race, where each time there's been a safety incident and there have been lapped cars in that race. The race director has given the order for those lapped cars to unlap in one of these situations. Martin Brundle is asking the audience whether or not those lapped cars will unlap. That's rather strange.
It's absolutely mandatory.
Martin doesn't think it's absolutely mandatory.
But that's normally on a wet day.
Martin thinks that that's normally on a wet day. There isn't a single example that you can view since the start of the 2012 season, when this regulation was reintroduced, where they haven't released them. Weather conditions do not play a part in this, Martin. Why are you lying to the world, Martin Brundle?
They don't. And if so, how long will they wait for the...
What do you mean, Martin? How long will they wait? Well, the regulation is once the situation is safe, once the track is declared safe by the clerk of the course, and then the order needs to be given to those lap cars to do so. They can't just do so of their own accord. They can't just decide, oh, we now think that the track is clear, so we'll unlap ourselves. No, you have to be given the order from race control. Okay, you are now being given the order from race control to unlap. So once that takes place, those lapped cars unlap, and once that last of those lapped cars has passed the leader and passed the safety car, that safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. So it essentially gives those released cars a further lap with which to attempt to catch the back of the pack. Now, if they are released halfway around a lap, they get a lap and a half to try to catch the back of the pack, and that's usually enough. if it's right at the end of a given lap that they finally get released, that one mandatory lap of the safety car that they're given might not be enough for them to fully catch the back of the pack, which is where the race director has at his discretion the option of keeping that safety car on track to perform another lap behind it with those lead cars travelling at the slower pace in order to enable those released lapped cars to fully catch the back of the pack. That is where we have this regulation 15.3, the race director's overriding authority over the use of that safety car to ensure that he's content that the situation is safe and that it's safe to go racing. So if he doesn't feel it's safe to go racing, the conditions don't allow, even though these procedures may have been carried out, if he still has safety concerns, he can continue to prolong the use of that safety car because that's its purpose, to ensure safety. And the other purpose, and they're both hand in hand, is to ensure sporting fairness is achieved to all of the competitors in that event. So if those released cars still haven't caught the back of the pack and are still significantly disadvantaged from the pre-incident condition, then the race director can prolong the use of that safety car. And that is the purpose of regulation 15.3 in those 2021 sporting regulations. But Brundle and Crofty will explain that later on, I'm sure. Perhaps. No, they don't.
Those lap cars to get out of the way, if they wait for them to catch
It's not for them to get out of the way, Martin.
the pack up, which they don't have to do,
No.
then
I've just explained the notion of whether or not they have to and what the regulations are as a minimum and what the race director has at his discretion in terms of what he perceives that situation to be, whether sporting fairness has been restored correctly.
I don't think we'll get a racing lap. If they let
Absolutely right.
them through, we could get one racing lap.
If they let them through, we could get one racing lap.
3 laps to go.
You don't really explain anything, though, do you? If they let them through, we could get one racing lap. You are aware that this whole event is being broadcast to the world and has attracted new viewers who do not understand the sport. And you're not doing a very good job of explaining the rules of the sport, what needs to happen, and why it needs to happen. Why is that?
Nicholas Latifi is seemingly okay after that contact with the barriers, around about 90 miles an hour. But he would have taken a whack, and it's good to see that he's okay. Sergio Perez coming into the pits again.
So Max,
I think they're retiring the car.
Is that Max? Let's disorientate everybody. Oh, what's happening? It's all a bit disorientating. It's exciting. We're on the edge of our seats. We don't know whether it's going to restart or not. Is that Max in the pits? Oh, anything can happen. This is Formula One. The formula for excitement.
Here, Perez into the pits for the 4th time. I didn't understand why, but I think they are retiring the car, and yes, they're not going to be working on it, and that is the end of Sergio Perez's Abu Dhabi Grand Prix.
Checo, we need to retire the car. We need to retire the car. Box.
And for the
Really? Yeah.
Yes, it does come as a surprise, Checo. It does come as a surprise. You are the driver. You are the person who has the seat of pants experience to know how your car feels, know how it's performing, and are surprised that that car is incapable of completing that race distance, bearing in mind you are travelling behind the safety car in 3rd position, on course for a podium, 3rd place, and your team tell you, oh no, it's not capable of doing that. Really?
Box.
And lapped cars will not be allowed to overtake.
And lapped cars will not be allowed to overtake. Why? Why would lapped cars not be allowed to overtake? Well, you have to do the procedure if you're going to go racing. If it's not safe, the order that's given is overtaking will not be permitted. Lapped cars will not be able to overtake is not a order. It's not in the regulations of the sport. If we go to the main feed, which normally gets blocked, so I'm going to have to quickly stop it.
Lot.
If we look at the top of the screen, FIA race control, the banner that's on the top of the screen, the graphic generated by F1 TV tells the world FIA race control, lapped cars will not be allowed to overtake. Well, that's not a regulation. That's not an official ruling. The official ruling is overtaking will not be permitted. And the reason that overtaking will not be permitted is that it's not safe. And hence you continue lapping behind that safety car until it is safe. Because lapped cars will not be allowed to overtake is ambiguous. Does that mean if you've been lapped, you are not allowed to overtake? But if you haven't been lapped, you are allowed to overtake. Who's allowed to overtake who? It makes no sense. If it's not safe, then it's not safe to go racing. If it's not safe for lapped cars to overtake, then it's not safe for racing to resume. So it's just not a message, but it's presented to the world as being an authentic FIA message. We're still waiting for the Michael Masi error under pressure, by the way. That's yet to come. All this is nothing to do with the error. All this is just normal. It's not normal. It's not normal. It's all a contrivance. Every single part of this is a contrivance, as Andrew Benson reveals in his report. So how do we know why that order would have been given? If we look at the driver cameras, we can go to Nicholas Latifi's car, and we can see here that this is Nicholas Latifi's car being recovered at that stage. And we look around and oh, what's going on here? Oh, there are marshals on track still sweeping the area. Hence, it is not safe to release those lapped cars. That is the reason why the unlapping procedure cannot take place. Oh, and lapped cars will not be allowed to overtake. So what does this mean, Brundle and Crofty? Let's go back and listen to what Brundle and Crofty, the sports experts, describe about the situation.
Cars will not be allowed to overtake.
It's not mandatory in the regulations.
Yes, it is.
Which leaves Verstappen with a lot of work to do there.
It doesn't leave Verstappen with anything to do. It means that we're still in a situation where the safety concern has not been dealt with. We're still in a situation where the track has not been declared safe because there's still debris on the track that needs clearing up. And until that track is declared safe, we cannot begin the unlapping procedure. We are now on lap 56. Those lapped cars need to be released on this lap, lap 56, so that lap 57 can be that mandatory safety car lap given to those released cars with which to catch the back of the pack. And if that can be accomplished, then lap 58 can be a racing lap. But the single requirement is it has to be this lap that those lapped cars are released on and have all passed that safety car prior to that safety car commencing lap 57. Let us see if that is possible. What the sports commentators are saying to you now is a lie.
So Mercedes will be Constructors' champions at the end of this race as it stands at the moment, assuming that Hamilton and Bottas finish this race.
Disorientation and lies. Mercedes went into that race with a 28-point lead. A 28-point lead can only be overturned if you have two cars that finish that Grand Prix. One car finishing that Grand Prix can only achieve a maximum of 26 points. Mercedes had a lead of 28 points. So at this stage, even if Hamilton and Bottas crash out or suffer engine failures and Max Verstappen wins with the fastest lap, Mercedes will still have won the Constructors' Championship by 2 points. And the sports commentators are saying we're on course to be champions if they still finish the race. You couldn't make it up, could you? Stay on the edge of your seats to see what happens, everybody. Stay on the edge of your seats. Why did Red Bull retire that car? What deals did they do with Toto Wolff? You win the prize money for the Constructors' Championship? We'll make sure of that. You give us that one racing lap, because we need some help from the racing gods.
The Drivers' Championship, though, is very much up for grabs. The lapped cars won't be allowed to overtake, which means that
the circuit isn't safe to begin the procedure to unlap them yet, so we need to continue lapping behind that safety car until it is.
There are plenty of cars in between Hamilton and Verstappen for Verstappen to fight his way through.
It doesn't mean that at all.
Norris, Alonso, and also Ocon and Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel.
None of
So 8 lapped cars that all need releasing, and for the second time these two commentators just list 5 of them. The 5 in between Lewis and Max. Draw your attention to just 5 of the 8 cars.
which are for position, of course.
No.
They're obliged to get out of the way, but Lewis will be long.
They're all for position. Having Perez retired, Norris is now in 8th. Sorry, Perez is still showing on that graphic because at that stage Norris was lapped. But Perez, you'll see him, it's got him in the pits. He will start going down that list of competitors. Essentially, when they pass the start-finish line, Norris will be in 7th position, Gasly in 6th. Look at their relative positions. 7th, the orange dot tucked behind Hamilton. 6th, at the back of the safety car snake. From being just 12 seconds behind him, Norris is now the best part of a lap behind Gasly. They are for position. 7th needs to be able to challenge 6th on any restart of this race. Hence, you have to perform the mandatory requirements in those regulations.
Long down the road.
That I suppose is the compromise that race control have made here.
The sports commentators are telling the global watching audience, I suppose this is the compromise that the race director is doing. I suppose this is the referee changing the rules of the sport to get us to see an exciting finish to this sport. Sport has rules and regulations which you must comply with. Martin Brundle and David Croft have been lying about the possibilities and lying about the purpose of these rules and regulations all of this time, and now they are presenting that they suppose that this is what the race director is doing to try to set up an exciting finish to an event. You cannot manufacture a grandstand finish to a sporting event. They sometimes happen organically. You cannot manufacture that. That's fraudulent. That is result manipulation. That is race fixing. Let us rewind.
None of which are for position, of course.
No.
They're obliged to get out of the way, but Lewis will be long down the road.
That I suppose is the compromise that race control have made here, by giving the best possible chance for racing to the finish rather than finishing behind the safety.
For giving the best chance for racing to the finish. For whom? Whom is going to have the best chance of racing to the finish? All competitors need that chance of racing to the finish. They all entered the competition. They've all been impacted by a safety incident. They've all had to stop racing. And so when we start again, they all have the right to start racing again, having had those conditions reset for everybody. And yet the sports commentators are saying, I suppose the race director, the man in charge of this, is making this compromise to give us the best chance of a racing finish. Who? The best chance of a racing finish? Is he giving Lando Norris the best chance of having a chance of racing Pierre Gasly for a battle between 7th position and 6th position? He will not release the lapped cars that are in between 2nd place and 3rd place. So is the race director making a compromise to give us the best chance of seeing whether or not 3rd place can overcome 2nd place? No, he is not. But the sports broadcasters say, I suppose, what he's doing, he's somehow compromising. Somehow he's not applying the rules of the sport. Somehow he's breaking the rules of the sport so that we get to see some excitement. Well, that is no longer a sport. And to try to pass it off as being so is fraudulent.
Safety car, they've decided the lap cars will stay where they are.
Cancel that. Lap cars will not be allowed to overtake.
You know, I said that F1 TV are the creators of the show. Formula One, you don't get to see a full picture of all of the goings on because you get to see clip here, clip there, replay here, replay there, into the pits, this, that, and the other. Message from the team to the driver that was actually took place. That message took place from turn 5 here down to turn 6. There were quite long pauses in between both the pit wall speaking, Max's race engineer, and Max speaking. They took them gaps out and they're now playing you that message here.
Yeah, of course. Typical decision.
It's classic.
I'm not surprised.
It's a typical decision, that they're leaving the lapped cars in situ. It's not a typical decision that they're leaving the lapped cars in situ because it's never happened before. They've always given the order for those lapped cars to be released. But F1 TV are playing that to the global audience. They've chosen that message knowing that it's not accurate, and they are playing it to the world so that the world feels that Max Verstappen and Red Bull are somehow being hard done by.
Well, I'll try and look at this objectively. We should get 1 lap of racing here.
Crofty suggests that objectively we should get 1 lap of racing here. Remember what I said earlier this lap? We are on lap 56. all 8 of those lapped cars need to be released this lap so that lap 57 can take place behind that safety car to give those released cars the opportunity to catch the back of the pack, and the safety car can peel in at the end of lap 57 so that lap 58 can be a racing lap. Crofty is telling us all, I'll talk about this objectively, we should get 1 racing lap. Well, the procedure hasn't been carried out yet, Crofty. Why are you projecting to the world that we should get 1 racing lap? Why should we get 1 racing lap? Let's have a look at whether it's possible to release lap cars. Let's have a look at Maxwell Verstappen and his driver camera. What turn are we coming round there? Oh. See these guys here? In the orange overalls, they're marshals. They're just departing the track now. Just now have finished the sweeping of the track and will report to the clerk of the course, and the clerk of the course will have checked the barriers and will have to then declare that the track is now safe, and he and the race director can begin to give the order to those 8 cars to begin that unlapping procedure. That can only take place once the marshals have left the track. They have not left the track yet. They do so in the next few seconds. We'll go back to track review.
Good flag.
If they release the lapped cars now, the last of those lapped cars is the white dot of Mick Schumacher, who has not passed that incident. They will not give him the order to pass until he has passed turn 14. Look where the leader and obviously the safety car is at this stage. Look at the time it takes for Hamilton, the leader, to then cross the start-finish line. Assess how long it takes for, firstly, the clerk of the course to make the decision, to do the checks, to ensure that he is satisfied that everything is safe. He is responsible, and should anything take place there again, should there be another crash and that crash barrier not perform as it should and somebody lose their life, he is criminally responsible for that. Therefore, he has to do his job correctly. That's why it takes some time. So, he has to firstly declare that track safe. He has to communicate with the race director, and then the race director has to communicate that to the teams. Okay, we're now safe. Now you can inform your driver that they are eligible to overtake. That takes time.
So what do Red Bull want? And Max Verstappen and Gianpiero Lambiase as race engineer, do they want the chance, or do they want to finish behind the safety car with no...
You can see, look at the locations of these cars. They are not going to pass the leader and the safety car by the end of lap 56, which means this is a safety car finish. It is a safety car finish. The earliest that those lapped cars can be released is on lap 57. The earliest that they can be released is on lap 57, and therefore lap 58 is that mandatory safety car lap. And although the safety car will peel into the pits at the end of lap 58, they cannot go racing until they cross the start-finish line. But when they cross the start-finish line, that's the end of the race. The checkered flag goes. Lewis Hamilton is the winner. There can be no overtaking. Lewis Hamilton is an 8-time world champion, providing he keeps his car on the road at this point. But instead of telling the watching world of 108.7 million people that, Sky Sports, F1, Martin Brundle, David Croft, they will tell you.
Well, I'll try and look at this objectively. We should get 1 lap of racing here. If we allowed the lap cars to overtake, we'd have no laps of racing to the checkered flag. So what do Red Bull want? Max
What do Red Bull want?
Verstappen and Giampiero Lambiase as race engineer, do they want the chance or do they want to finish?
Do Red Bull want the chance? Hang on a minute, this is a sport being contested under the rules and regulations of the sport. So, do we want to break the rules to give Red Bull a chance? How about authentic commentary would be saying, what on earth is going on here? The referee is not complying with the rules of the sport. This is not allowed to happen. This is what needs to happen. That is what authentic commentary of any sport that you know of would be saying. Formula One, you have Martin Brundle and Crofty lying about the rules of the sport, presenting all sorts of different narratives, pretending that the rules of the sport are for a different purpose to what they're really for, validating the notion of the referee, the race director, compromising in order to give us an exciting climax, a grandstand finish to a sporting event, contriving an outcome to a sporting event, and they're trying to pass this off as being some sort of normality. And we are told after the event, this is just the race director who made an error under pressure.
Behind the safety car with no overtaking, because I think that is the decision that has come from race control. And personally, this is the decision that gives them the best chance if they want it.
Yeah, I mean,
this is the decision that gives Red Bull the best chance if they want it. You're not allowed to make that decision. You can't resume racing with lapped cars in situ. We are now in a position where you start racing. Well, where's Lando Norris? Well, he's behind Hamilton. He's now left all this point behind Gasly. If the order that's been given is lapped cars will not be allowed to overtake, at what point in time can they overtake? Is that, oh, when we start racing again, Max Verstappen, who's 6 cars back because there's 5 cars in between him and Hamilton, oh, he's allowed to overtake, but the 5 that are in between Hamilton and Verstappen, oh, you're not allowed to overtake each other. You've just got to stay there and let Max go by you all. I'm not sure whether or not you're allowed to overtake each other after Max has done that or not. Just move out the way. It's not your race. That's not how this works. This is a sport of a multi-competitor event where all competitors are contesting with one another. This is a contrivance. This is setting up something where only there's a race-off between 2 competitors, knowing full well you're breaking the rules to set that up, and knowing full well that one car is nobbled by being on 44-lap-old hard tyres, and the other one has just put on a set of the fastest compound tyre. And you've broken the rules to set up a 1-lap race-off in those conditions. That is fixing a sport. That is fraud. Who has set that up? Well, think back to it has to be this lap. Think back to we should unlap now to get this job done. Otherwise, it will be too late. Fernando Alonso. I'm not going to cut to them on this video, but you have Ferrari saying, we think he might restart like this. The regulations don't permit you to start like this, but Ferrari are going along with it. We think he might restart like this. Why might you think he might restart like this? Why are you not objecting to him restarting like this? Your car is in third position. Your car will be held back from challenging for second position or even first position. Why would you accept that? You wouldn't in any other Grand Prix, would you? The same applies to all of the other teams that are disadvantaged. They all go with it. Lance Stroll will say, yeah, man, what the beep? And they tell him to be quiet. Yes, Lance, we'll explain to you later. Shh. None of the messages exchanged between the teams and their driver are authentic or in accordance with the rules and regulations of this sport. They are going along with the contrivance. That's not authentic sport, is it? That is not authentic sport.
The regulation, as I said, they may allow the lap cars through. It's not mandatory.
That is a lie. For the third time, Martin Brundle lies about the regulation of the sport. 3 times. Each of these things they triple down on to cement it in your head that this is possible, this is possible, this is possible. This is the purpose, this is the purpose, this is the purpose. They're all lies.
Pointed out, but as you point out, Crofty, there'd be no racing laps if they let the lap cars through, because I think the safety car will come in at the end of this lap and there will be one racing lap.
We're now on lap 57. Martin Brundle thinks that the safety car will come in at the end of this lap. The regulation has not been carried out. It has to be carried out for the reasons that I've described. Firstly, those lapped cars have to be released. They haven't been released yet. He thinks the safety car will come in with those lapped cars not released. That's ridiculous. Not only have they not been released, which they have to be, once they've been released, the safety car will remain on track for an additional lap. So, there is no way there can be any racing, because the race will end as a safety car finish. And Martin Brundle, the sports expert, presented expert, is telling the world that he thinks that the safety car will be coming in at the end of this lap and there will be one racing lap. Has Michael Masi made his error yet? What error has Michael Masi made yet? Well, he hasn't made an error yet, has he? So far, Masi has not made an error. Lapped cars will not be allowed to overtake is a false message. But so far, all that's happened is a car has crashed. It needed dealing with. He deployed the safety car. And that safety incident then got dealt with. It couldn't be until the end of lap 56 at the earliest that the clerk of the course could then report back to Michael Masi, the race director, to say, right, the track is now safe. You can now carry out regulation 48.12, the unlapping procedure that is required to take place prior to resumption of any racing. But if we do that now anyway, then it's going to be a safety car finish, because we're now on lap 57. Release them on lap 57. Lap 58 is a safety car lap. Safety car finish. So regardless of whether you release them or not now, it's a safety car finish. So you can release them, but you still can't go racing. They'll just poot around and catch the back of the pack, but it's still a safety car finish. Martin Brundle is saying Martin Brundle thinks, before there's been any announcement to anybody else, he thinks the safety car will come in at the end of this lap and there will be one racing lap, Why do you think that, Martin Brundle? David Croft, when you suggested, so I think what the race director's doing here is making a compromise. By giving the chance of racing to the finish, he's saying lapped cars are remaining in situ. You are presenting the notion of a racing finish. Where has that come from? Where has that come from? Has that come from Masi? Why have you jumped to that conclusion, David Croft? Why would you think that that is the conclusion to draw from all that we've seen so far? Because that doesn't make sense.
They'll all get blue flags, I would imagine.
They embellish the lie with the notion of blue flags. The blue flags being, if you're a lapped car, you have a fast car behind you that's coming up to lap you, you just get out of the way of it, don't impede it. So that's what they're saying. Oh, all these 5 cars in between Lewis and Max will get blue flags, so that then Max will have the Red Sea parted and he can get through that to then try and get on the back of Lewis. That's all an embellishment of a scenario that can't even take place. It's not allowed to take place like that, and yet they are embellishing that. And F1 TV play the global audience this recorded message. It's not live. They select it, they play it to the world to get you to think this is possible.
Christian and Michael.
Yes, go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, why aren't we getting these lap cars out of the way?
Just give me, well, because Christian, just give me a second. Okay, my big one is to get this incident clear.
You only need 1 racing lap.
F1 TV play that to the world. F1 TV are the broadcasters. Now, if you are the broadcaster of the sport, you know that sport. You are the camera crew, you are the editor of that camera crew team, you are an expert of the sport. You've seen that much of it, you know what's possible and you know what isn't. You know that we are on lap 57 now. You know that firstly the regulations are we have to release the lapped cars, and then that safety car will remain on track for a further lap, because that's what we see every time. And therefore you know that this is going to be a safety car finish. You've just heard a message between Christian Horner and Race Control, where Christian Horner is asking for a racing lap. You know that that's not allowed to happen. Yet you choose that message to play that message to the world. Why would you choose a message which isn't in compliance with the regulations of the sport to play it to the world? Why would you do that?
Well, I assume Christian's talking about then, getting the lap cars out of the way, not clearing the incidents away.
Yeah, I mean, all of the cars in front of Max will get blue flags, and I do.
Embellishing the lie. The 5 cars in between Lewis and Max will get blue flags, and they'll have to get out of the way. Remember these 5 of 8 lapped cars? We're talking about 5 cars. It's all about Lewis and Max, isn't it? Everybody's in this event. The Formula 1 calendar is like a league season. You go to the event, you collect your points. You accumulate as many as you can over the course of the season. The driver that's accumulated the most points is the world champion. At the first event of the season, you do not separate out just 2 competitors and set them off to see who's going to win in a 2-car race-off. At the 7th race of the season, you don't just select 2 competitors and set them off ahead of everybody else and see who's going to win out of them. At the 19th race of the season, you don't just select 2 competitors and set them off to see who's going to race off for the win. It's a multi-competitor event. They all are. The last event of the season isn't a any different to anything else. It's not a cup final. It's not a shootout. It's not a penalty shootout. It's just a league game, which can result in win, lose, or draw. What are they doing? They are contriving an outcome. They are setting up a last lap shootout between just two competitors, which you are not allowed to do in the sport. And who has been setting it up with what they are leading you to believe is even possible? F1 TV is making you believe that that is possible and going to happen. Sky Sports F1 is setting that up to make you believe that that is possible and going to happen. And then all of a sudden, we get the race director making an error. Crazy shit.
Duty bound to get out of the way, but they're all in a reasonable fight themselves, aren't they?
Well, so here we go. Normally, you know, you'd see the race leader backing up the pack a little bit when the safety car goes. I would imagine on this occasion, if we do get a lap, Martin, Hamilton will want to be disappearing off.
I should imagine if we do get a lap, okay. Remember when they were at turn 2 and 3, Martin says, because I think the safety car will be coming in at the end of this lap, and we will get one racing lap.
Off into the distance as fast as he can.
Yeah, I don't see any way Verstappen can do anything with that, but indeed.
We haven't spoken about the fact that in the event of a safety car finish, which is what it should be, ladies and gentlemen, you are in the process of watching history. You are going to see the all-time record for Drivers' World Championships being broken by Sir Lewis Hamilton. Michael Schumacher's record of 7 World Championships is going to be broken. A record that many of us thought we probably wouldn't see in our lifetimes. And Sir Lewis Hamilton is going to be on course to do that. You are in the process of watching history. You didn't hear that. You heard, I don't see what Max can do with that.
It is the safety car coming in this lap. We think it should do, could do.
Martin, you told us at turn 3 that you think it will, and we'll see one racing lap. Now you're saying, is it coming in? We think it should do, could do. Why would you think it should do, could do? The regulations haven't been kept. The lap cars, oh, they're on track of you. They've started going by. We think it should do, could. Stay on the edge of your seats, everybody. This is Formula One. Anything can happen. It's only live once. No, it's a sport. There are rules and regulations, and the sport has to be carried out in accordance with those. Otherwise, it's not a sport. And you, all of you, are contriving this. Each and every team is being complicit with this. Despite the fact that some of your teams, your chances in this event are affected, you stayed silent about it. The teams, the drivers, F1 TV, Sky Sports F1, the FIA, all of them are involved in this setup.
Is there any more debris to clear up?
Is there any more debris to clear up? You think the safety car will be coming in, and you've just asked the question, is there any more debris to clear up? Why are you purposefully disorientating fans and viewers? The purpose of the safety car is to deal with a safety incident. If there is any debris on the track, why would you bring the safety car back in? Because that safety incident isn't dealt with. We saw the point where those marshals were leaping over the barriers, having cleared that track. You're now asking, is there any more debris on the track? Almost a lap later. That's strange, Martin. Why are you disorientating everybody?
But we're halfway round already.
Race control are now saying lapped cars to overtake the safety car. So Norris and Alonso and Ocon and Leclerc and Vettel to
And it's
overtake
ending.
it.
And it's ending. Wow.
Wow, it's ending. Wow. Even though back at turns 2 and 3, you said you think that it will be coming in at the end of this lap. And it's ending. And it's ending. Wow. And we get F1 TV select a pre-recorded message to play to the world. What is that pre-recorded message?
Mike.
Toto Wolff. Toto Wolff pretending to be dismayed by the situation, even though he's guaranteed now the £100 million plus prize money for winning the Constructors' Championship that he then goes partying about later on that night. Crowd surfing.
So there's confusion, but the safety car...
Why is there confusion? Why is there confusion? You were predicting that this would happen. You were predicting that the rules were going to be broken to enable this to happen. But now we're all confused. Oh, what's happening now? What's the race director doing?
Is coming in at the end of this lap. So those back markers allowed to over...
Those back markers, you know, 7th position, who should be challenging for 6th. Back markers, what, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, or what, top 10 positions? Back markers, are they? What about 3rd position that's being blocked off from challenging for 2nd position? Is 3rd position a back marker? 3rd position has, what does he have? He has Daniel Ricciardo and Lance Stroll in between himself and Verstappen. So by the time they get across the start-finish line, he's going to be, whereas Verstappen would only be half a second behind Hamilton, Sainz is 2 seconds back from Verstappen. Well, you're not going to be able to bridge that gap in the space of a lap. He's not half a second behind Verstappen, is he? Right on his tail, able to get a slipstream and challenge for 2nd, is he? A complete contrivance. Andrew, thank you for revealing all of these facets to it. It's absolutely, and there is more. I appreciate this. I'm trying to keep this video down to a minimal. Okay, so I appreciate that you're going to reveal more than this, Andrew Benson. But we'll just continue it on a little bit more.
Take the safety car, and that has now left Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen.
Michael, this isn't right.
A chosen interjected message from F1 TV. They have to give a nod to those of us who know what should be happening, but they have to tell us that it's all a bit confusing and it's all happening so quickly that nobody really knows what's going on.
It has left Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen side by side.
You see Max Verstappen's nose of his car inch ahead of Sir Lewis Hamilton's car. People would argue that that's not an overtake. If they were crossing the start-finish line at the end of the Grand Prix in that condition, which car would win? Oh, well, it would be the car which has got its nose an inch ahead. That would qualify it as an overtake, wouldn't it? That would be the winning car because that one is ahead. So that's an overtake.
Hamilton will be ahead. Verstappen is absolutely desperate to get on with this on that soft compound tyre. We're going to have one lap of racing to decide the championship in 2021. Hamilton has the advantage.
Hamilton has the advantage.
Verstappen has the faster, fresher tyres, and we have got 3 points.
A grandstand finish and an incredible climax. So, we saw that happen. We saw what took place, which Andrew is finally revealing. What Andrew also has revealed is what took place in the stewards' appeal on the night, because Mercedes did protest to the stewards, which were Gary Connolly, Derek Warwick, the Great White Hope, Felix Holter. These stewards had all been stewards at events where there'd been safety car events, unlapping, all of these procedures carried out, all of these infringements, offences. They'd dealt with them before. I've evidenced all that in my work, and that's available for Andrew for him to write about in future articles. Protest dismissed. What protest would be dismissed? Red Bull as an interested party. Let's go to the other one first, the one that first got dismissed. Let's just have a look at this one. So firstly, Mercedes protested Article 48.8. You've all heard about the 48.12 protest. 48.8 was where Mercedes were contesting that Max Verstappen had overtaken Lewis Hamilton in preparation for that illegal last lap, which he did. And rather than the FIA look at the film, look at the footage and say, okay, let's have a look at Lewis Hamilton's car, let's have a look at Max Verstappen's car. Does Max Verstappen's car go ahead of Lewis Hamilton's car? Can we make a judgment on that basis? Oh, yes, we can see from the footage that that car has gone ahead. That's an infringement. There's a 5-second penalty to Max Verstappen. That is the job of the FIA. Instead of doing that, the FIA asked Red Bull what Red Bull think, and Red Bull came into that appeal and said, Mercedes said that Max overtook him, which, there you go. Red Bull argue it was not overtaken, in inverted commas, and that both cars were on and off the throttle, and that there were a million precedents under safety cars where cars had pulled alongside and then moved back, that the car was in front. Now, a million precedent, that's the sort of thing where somebody would say it like that in the comments section. There is not a million precedents, Red Bull. Can you give me one? The answer to that is no. No, there isn't one that hasn't been punished. So, no, there isn't a million precedents. But the FIA stewards concluded the protest is admissible, but they've considered the various statements made by the parties. Rather than look at the evidence, they've considered what Red Bull said in the comments section and determined that although the car 33 did at one stage, for a very short period of time, move slightly in front of car 44, so they acknowledged that it happened. At the time both cars were accelerating and braking, it moved back behind 44 and was not in front. That's not the regulation. The regulation is you're just not allowed at any stage to overtake. Oh yeah, but it went back. It's not a regulation. Yeah, I did steal his bike, but I put it back a week later. It's fine. Oh yeah. Now the crime's theft, mate. Accordingly, the protest is dismissed and the protest deposit is not refunded. Crazy. Right, so that was that one. And then we talk about the FIA not carrying out their regulation of releasing all 8 lapped cars and then keeping that safety car on track for the further lap. Rather than the FIA stewards look at the situation and say, well, firstly, Mercedes are saying all 8 cars weren't released. Were all 8 cars released? No, they weren't. You're absolutely right, Mercedes. That safety car has to remain on track for another lap. Did it remain on track for another lap? No, it didn't. You're absolutely right, Mercedes. The FIA didn't do that. Instead, they asked Red Bull what Red Bull thought in the comments section. The hearing was adjourned to allow Red Bull to consider its response further. The race director was present. So Michael Masi, rather than the stewards assess what actually happened and compare what actually happened to the rules and say, well, yes, these are the rules, this is what happened, that's not compliant, this is the ruling. We'll ask Red Bull what they think, we'll ask Michael Masi what he thinks. Well, it doesn't matter what you think. What happened, happened, and it's not allowed to happen. So, Mercedes claimed, well, it's a statement of fact, it's not a claim, it's a statement of fact. There were 2 breaches of the sporting regulations which state that any cars that have been lapped by the leader will be required to pass the cars on the lead lap and the safety car, and once the last lapped car, which means the 8th of 8, that's what the last one means, the last lapped car, right, the 8th one of all 8 lap cars has passed the leader, the safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. Okay, Mercedes argued, no, it's not an argument, it's a statement of fact, that this has been, had this have been complied with, card 44 would have won the race because it's a safety car finish. Therefore, the stewards to amend the classification under Article 11.9.3h of the FIA International Sporting Code. The regulation that allows for these amendments should there be situations that arise where there are protests. This is how you deal with this sort of situation. Red Bull have an argument to defend the situation. There is no defence. Red Bull argue that any does not mean all. Oh, we're getting into a legal argument now. Legally, any does. You know what I said about legal and law? Law is the difference between right and wrong. Legal is a corrupt representation of truth to try to win an argument. That's what Red Bull did. Legally, any does not mean all. In the context of this, it does. It says once the last lapped car. It says any cars that have been lapped by the leader will be required. Now, if any car that has been lapped by the leader is required, if you're required, if you've been lapped, that means if you've been lapped, you are required to pass the leader. Oh, but that doesn't mean all of them. Shut up, Red Bull. Shut up. Article 48.13 of the sporting regulations state that the message safety car in this lap is the signal that it will enter the pit lane at the end of that lap. Okay, that's a lovely sentence. It's got no relevance. And therefore, Article 48.13 overrides Article 48. No, it's not something that overrides. It's a sequence of events. You didn't carry out one of the steps in that sequence, and therefore that means the rules have been broken. It doesn't mean, oh, we can break the rules by not carrying out that, but as soon as we throw the next one, oh, that overrides all that's gone before it. We can ignore the fact that one of them was ignored, and we'll just carry on. That's overridden everything, and we'll carry on. It's all fine now. That's not the way it works. As soon as you don't carry out one of those steps in that procedure, you've failed. You've broken the rules. We need to reinstate back to the previous lap. But Red Bull argue that the overriding nature of 48.13, which is utter tosh. The Article 15.3 gives the race director overriding authority over the use of the safety car. The race director, overriding authority. He has overriding authority on the grounds of sporting fairness. He can prolong it on the grounds of safety or to ensure sporting fairness. Doesn't give him the overriding authority to freestyle it and ignore the mandatory regulations. That has been confirmed by the International Court of Appeal. And that even if all cars that had been lapped, 8 in total, of which 5 were allowed to overtake the safety car, it would have not changed the outcome of the race. Well, those 5 cars, 5 of 8, were released on lap 57. Had all 8 been released on lap 57, that safety car still has to stay on track for an additional lap, meaning it's a safety car finish. And yet Red Bull present 0.5 as if it's got any relevance whatsoever. The race director so all 5 of Red Bull's points are utter tosh. They shouldn't even be in there. Mercedes are appealing to the governing body of the sport that the governing body's race director has not applied the regulations of the sport, and therefore something needs to be done about it. And the governing body ask Red Bull what they think. Red Bull come up with this utter lie of an argument, and the FIA say, oh, we agree with you, Red Bull. Even though Red Bull had competed in 198 Grand Prix prior to this under this set of regulations and never once thought that this was a valid interpretation of them. But in Abu Dhabi 2021, they did. How long does it take to go through those regulations to construct that argument? Is that done in the heat of the moment? Is that done where Jonathan Wheatley with Max Verstappen in this, oh, it's a safety car, late safety car with 5 laps to go? Does Jonathan Wheatley get out the sporting regulations? You know, Martin Blunder will tell you they're like a legal document and they're this thick. Does Jonathan Wheatley go through them and go through all his legal interpretations of them and then decide to get onto the radio to Michael Masi and go, Jonathan, Michael, this is Jonathan. You know, you don't have to let them lapped cars go right around the track, and then we have a motor race on our hands. The reason I know that we don't have a motor race on our hands is because we can do. You can use your 15.3 overriding authority, and then we can say that we can override everything with 48.13. And yeah, just set it up for Max. How long does it take you to construct all that? Really clever guys to be doing this on the fly, aren't they? Really clever guys. And it's really clever of F1 TV and Sky Sports F1 to be sowing the seeds ahead of it all happening to convince everybody of some sort of authenticity to it. Crazy. You know, all mutually exclusive events. No contrivance whatsoever. Nothing to see here. The race director's evidence. The race director stated that the purpose of 48.12 was to remove those lapped cars who would interfere in the racing between the leaders, and that in his view Article 48.13 was the one that applied in this case. That's not true, Michael Masi. You know it's not true because there's 4 events which I have evidenced that you kept that safety car on track for 2 laps after you had released the lapped cars, and you did so to enable those released cars to fully catch the back of the pack to restore sporting fairness to them. So it's not to get them out of the way because they're interfering, is it? It's to restore sporting fairness. So that's a lie, Michael Masi. The race director also stated it had been long agreed by all teams that where possible it was highly desirable for the race to end in green conditions, i.e. not under a safety car. Michael, it would be highly desirable for the European Championships to end, the final to end with a penalty shootout to create a grandstand finish and an incredible climax, wouldn't it? It's long been agreed by the teams that if possible that would be a desirable outcome. So me, as the referee, thought I'd make that happen. That is a corrupt official fixing or contriving an outcome of a sporting event. I thought I'd break the rules of the sport to create the outcome that the teams had long agreed that they would think is beneficial to the marketability of this sport. That is fraud. That is fraud. The stewards consider that the protest is admissible. Having considered the various statements by the parties, the stewards determine the following. Article 15.3 allows the race director to control the use of the safety car, which in our determination includes its deployment and withdrawal. Really? Is that what you think? Well, the ICA confirmed that that is not true. It was never true. It didn't just become true at the start of 2024 when they determined it. It was always true. Although Article 48.12 may not have been applied fully in relation to the safety car returning to the pits at the end of the following lap, Article 48.13 overrides that. No. By not doing it, you fix the event. You can't, oh, we've not done it, that's fixed the event, but now it's been fixed. It's been overridden. Unbelievable. Accordingly, the protest is dismissed, and the protest deposit, we've got to pay £5,000 or something like that to protest. Oh, you don't get to that back, Mercedes. Unlucky. Doesn't matter. Drinks are on Toto anyway. His team's won 100 million, so drinks are on Toto. Let's all go crowd surfing, everybody. So, thankfully, Andrew Benson from the BBC, here he is, look. Andrew has finally produced, and there's more to come. This is not it all. There's more. But Andrew has now revealed this to the world, to the British audience, you know, the millions that watched the British Grand Prix that were oblivious to this. They all now know. The audience of 108.7 million that had all been lied to and all been duped by this contrivance, they now all know. And actually the 500 million worldwide viewers of the sport that F1 claims it has, they now all know too. So finally we are going to get justice. Finally, the FIA is going to admit its wrongdoing, and finally, these people are going to get punished for their fraud because now everybody knows. Or actually, no, it's just the 2,000 of you that subscribe to this channel that now know that. You knew it was wrong, you knew it was fixed, but you didn't know all that, did you? Why? Why didn't you know all that? The reason you didn't know all that is because no journalist in this world has ever revealed that. No media has ever revealed that. That is the evidence of all that taking place. And there is a lot more that is evidenceable. And this man tells you nothing. This man, when we talk about the BBC, I thought it was never going to happen. Lewis Hamilton broke his record. His last victory was at the 2021 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, as his fierce title fight with Red Bull's Max Verstappen came to a dramatic climax. A week later in Abu Dhabi, Hamilton lost the chance to win a record 8th championship after the then race director, Michael Masi, made up the rules as he went along in a late safety car period. Over the winter that followed, That's all that Andrew Benson can tell us about it. That's all that Andrew Benson can tell us about it. A week later in Abu Dhabi, Hamilton lost the chance to win a record 8th championship after the then race director, Michael Masi, made up the rules as he went along in a late safety car period. You don't mention Brundle and Crofty lying to everybody to set it up. You don't mention F1 TV constructing the narrative with the TV footage and the interjected messages. You don't mention the contrivances every other team that went along with it. You don't mention the steward's appeal. You never have. Why is that? The BBC's chief, the man who reports to the masses the goings on in the sport of Formula One. Why, with him and his credentials in his position, employed to be a journalist, is he incapable or unwilling to reveal the truth? Let me know what you think in the comments section. Anyway, that'll do for this one. Thank you very much for your time. I know it's been a bit of a long one, but hopefully some of you found it useful. That's what this channel's about. Okay, so occasionally I make some videos to mess with your mind, but this has been something I've been doing for about 18 months now because nobody else will. Start waking up. The media lies to you. They've hidden this contrivance. I've broken it down many times, and I can break it down in different ways many, many more. And I will continue to do so, and we will get justice. This will come out, and the entire fraud will, at some point, be exposed. It's not going to be 20 years later, like the post office scandal. They're not going to get away with it in the same way, where it can all be swept under the carpet. Oh, that was all that time ago. Yeah, forget about that now. It's not worth worrying about. No. The perpetrators need to be held to account, and they need punishment now. They've committed criminal offences. Lots of money has changed hands, and we, the world, have been defrauded. Let's not forget, a man, a sporting great, has been denied their valid accomplishment. They've been denied their place in history as the record-holding competitor in that sport. Anybody who is a sportsman, anybody who values any sort of sport, should never tolerate that. Thank you for your time.